Good morning. How is everyone today? Thank you for being here. We're going to start sharply at 10, but I think we still have some people rolling in. I've been told we have about 70 people here in person now and about another 70 online. So that's a strong indicator. There's a really strong interest in participating in this one-stop delivery system through the administration of Title I, Adult Dislocated Worker and Youth Funds. So just yesterday, Irene and I were fortunate to be in Minden, Nevada at the Nevada Association of County Officials with Commissioners Weekly and Kirkpatrick. And we witnessed something historic because Commissioner Weekly is the first African-American local elected to serve as the president of NACO. And he gave a really inspiring speech there to all the county officials that it was time for Nevada to pull together and work together, no matter our color, our creed, our party affiliation. And it had a great ovation. You can feel in the room that I think our state is ready to do that. And so I think today in that spirit, I'd like to let you know that that's our intent as well. This procurement of Title I funds will be one in where we strongly encourage the Title I funds to be part of an integrated system. As you probably all know, those of you who don't, the one-stop delivery system brings together 17 different partner programs under WIOA. And Title I is just one of the 17. So Title I can break down into 3 funds. We know them as adult, dislocated worker, and youth, but it's considered one of those 17 funds. And so for us moving forward, we want to make sure that as a board, we have a strong emphasis on convening the system here in Southern Nevada and making sure that these services the effectiveness is maximized because they're being deployed next to Title I, Adult Education and Family Literacy, Title III, Wagner-Pizer Employment Services, Title IV, Woke Rehab, and on down the line. So again, you'll probably now have seen that. For those of you who have read the RFP, we hope that today you brought lots of questions again about the RFP. That's why we're here for today. You'll be giving also later today throughout the day instructions on how to keep this dialogue going, because this is not your only opportunity to ask questions. You'll hear more about that. I would like to start with one small logistic thing, which is to please silence your phones to minimize disruption to the meeting. We have, again, people online. I would ask the same of them. And then after me, Jeremy's going to come up and give you more logistics on how this morning will play out. So with that, let me start with a question. Actually, I just saw our friend Shondell Newsom, so it always reminds me when I see him. For those of you who are veterans and have served and didn't hear it enough on Monday, welcome and thank you for your service. Yep. And so let me ask a question of those of you in the room who has already administered WIOA Title I funds. Show of hands, please. So we got roughly a third of the room. Who of you in the room has administered another type of federal funding? Can be any of the others. Show of hands. Okay, another third, roughly. And then who of you here has not administered any sort of state, federal, local, these kinds of funds? Who's a first-timer interested in getting in the game? Very good. So about roughly a third or under a fourth. So good mix. Last week we had an RFP bidders conference where we would try to stay as generic as possible to get these first-timers a good glance. And some say we try to scare them away, but they're here. So we appreciate that you're here and you have the interest, because today we do intend to dive down. And so all your questions we hope that you brought will be answered. Again, you can have some later, but we hope that all your questions will be answered. And that's why we have here all the gamma of our staff ready to do that. So I know they're anxious to get started, and we're going to go ahead and do that. Again, I want to welcome you and encourage you to please, at the right time, after we get explained how it's going to work, make sure that you bring forth all concerns, all questions, all interests you brought with you today. So welcome again, Jeremy. The mic is yours.
Good afternoon, or good morning, everybody. So my name is Jeremy Pickett. I'm the System Integration Manager for Workforce Connections, and what we're going to do is talk through some logistics as well as talk about system overview. So one of the things we want to do is some general housekeeping. If you have not signed in already, please raise your hand. Carol or Sonia in the back will go around, bring a clipboard to you to make sure that you signed in. It's imperative that you do sign in to record your presence for the mandatory bidders conference. Secondly, I was brought up to my attention, if anybody participated in the RFP 101 and talked about sharing information and contact information online, we're going to be actually putting the information of everybody who's attending today's bidders conference online. And if you wish to not share that information, just let Carol or Sonia know in the back room and they'll make a note of that. Secondly, we want to make sure that you are aware there's going to be a lot of forms that we're going to go through. All of these are online on our website, so that way you can take a closer look when you get back to your offices. And then lastly, different from when we did the RP 101, you were able to ask the questions throughout the bidders conference instead of staggered in between and towards the end. So with that being said, I'm going to talk to you about the one-stop delivery system and what that looks like. As far as our objective, Workforce Connections convenes the public workforce system development system in Southern Nevada. We are the local workforce board for Southern Nevada. We connect employers to a ready workforce through a network of one-stop career centers that provides education, training, and employment opportunities. So what does that mean when we talk about convening the system? As a board, what we do is we strategically build meaningful partnerships with state, county, municipalities, public and private entities. What we're also doing is looking to identify and leverage resources to help remove the duplication of services within our system, and then to help meet the needs of the job seekers and our employers. So if you're unaware what our local area looks like, we serve the 4 southern counties of Nevada, which is Clark, Esmeralda, Lincoln, and Nye. And with that, we have these service locations. We have one comprehensive one-stop center, which is next door. This one-stop center has all of the core and mandated partners seated. We also have library locations, which we are in all 4 local library districts. We also have county locations serving Pahrump, in Pahrump serving Nye and Esmeralda. We have in Lincoln, located in Caliente, serving the Lincoln County. And then we have multiple locations within Clark County, serving also Mesquite, Boulder City, and in Laughlin. We also have additional offices within Spring Mountain Youth Camp. We do provide services up there for the youth, as well as Clark County Detention Center. So our road to integration, this is a new journey that we're on, and it's not just the board, but as a workforce system. We're looking at this in a partnership that we have within all of the public and private entities, businesses, and what that means is that we are bringing what we call our core partners to the table. When we talked about our comprehensive one-stop center, we have, and what you are here for is Title I, which is the adult dislocated worker and the youth funds. We also have availability for Title II services for the adult education and family literacy. And what that means is that they provide the English language and additional skills for those individuals to gain employment. We have the Title III, which is the Wagner-Pizer Employment Services, and that's just universal access to job seekers seeking employment, referrals, and career services. Title IV provides employment programs to assist individuals with disabilities to become employable and to become economically self-sufficient. And then we have a mandated partner that was done by the governor that is an internal work program and refers other individuals or their participants to other titles for occupational skills training and employment opportunities. So these are all seated next door. And so when we talk about our system partners, there's actually 17 buckets that exist, and these are all of them. So we talked about the Titles 1 through 4, TANA, but we also have an additional 12 up there. This information, I believe, is online through the RFP resource link on our website. And there's a plethora of information that's there beyond what's around the RFP. So if you want more information about our system, partnerships, what these titles do, you can go on there and get more information. So what does that all mean when we talk about partnership? One of the things that we're looking toward is building a system that's designed around meaningful access. And what that means is that we're not doing it by a funding stream, but we're doing it through a human-centered approach, meaning we are looking at the customers and looking at customer need versus how am I spending my money and I need to and solely do 100% of services within those funds. We look at things around being the experts. So if I'm really good at doing, or you're really good at doing, occupational skills training, then, and so let somebody else take care of the educational needs. And it's not about staggering the services, but it's about comprehensive, ongoing services, multiple services happening at one time while a job seeker moves through our system to sufficiency. Broad-based services to serve all targeted populations. In the past, we have really defined services around what we call targeted populations, whether that might be serving individuals with disabilities, pre-entry, post-release, foster care youth. What we're looking now is that everybody will be serving all populations, okay? And Jeannie will talk a little bit more, and you'll hear this throughout this presentation today, but this is the first time you'll start hearing this. And we don't want to deny those services. And that's a big piece about that meaningful access, is that if I have somebody coming through my doors who has a disability and I know that I cannot meet that disability, then I'm going to reach out to a fellow partner such as vocational rehabilitation or another entity that might be an identified resource in our community to help support that individual as they gain the skills that they need and move towards employment. Another great tool that we have, this was implemented this year, is an online universal referral form. What this form does is it allows an opportunity to begin communication between each other. So in our seated centers, we may have, and in some cases I'm talking the libraries, we may have 4 different titles that are represented there. So what we want to do is encourage that conversation, that communication amongst those 4 individuals. But if those services are not available within that center, we can go ahead, put this information into an online form, send it over to the agency in which we're doing the referral to, and then it builds, 1, a trail of documentation, 2, it allows for the follow-up to happen with that other side of the organization that they were referred to, but it allows you as a career coach or a case manager to say, how is so-and-so doing? Or if they haven't been showing up for their services or commitment to their their employment needs and doing those other activities, then it allows that just to build communication with each other. Lastly, so we talk about accessibility here, about our one-stop program partners. Do we have all of these core and mandated partners seated within our, particularly our library one-stops? Absolutely not. We only have about 4. You'll see the seating chart here soon. But we have up to 4, and in some cases 5. But there's a couple of ways that we wanted to look at providing services. One is direct service, having that person come to us and work with us. But also, if somebody's unavailable to come to the center, they can also receive services through a virtual access, which means through technology. So an example of this might be vocational rehabilitation, where they're actually able to help an individual by going through Zoom. Even sometimes they'll do what's called office in a box, where they might come and meet that client elsewhere. So it's about providing access and not necessarily having just one central point of for location purposes. And for this part, the role of the operator. This is a new part within our system. In 2016, we procured out for an operator for the workforce system. What the role of the operator is 1, to provide oversight of our one-stop centers. And what does that mean? What that means is, I'm going to kind of go a little out of order here, and I apologize, but When we talk about oversight, we're talking about operationalizing the centers. We're looking at hours operations. We're looking at seated staff. We're looking at identifying activities that need to be placed and present within those centers to help career coaches, help case managers do the services that, or the activities that need to happen while you have a participant or a customer coming through who needs financial literacy, let's say, or help working on a resume, or basic computer skills. Another part of their role is to build on the partnerships that were convened by the board. So as I said, the board, we strategically bring these partners to the table. Once we start identifying where they fit in, where individuals fit in within our system, we then hand that off over to the operator to start continuing to build on that partnership. So it's the identify the resources and what they bring to the table, as well as what we bring to the table to help them as well. They additionally also report to the board, and what they do is they look at the operations and they report out how things are running, how things are functioning, where are the areas of improvement. They're constantly looking at a continuous improvement plan through their own contract to identify how do we streamline services better, how do we make them more seamless, how do we continue doing professional development among the seated staff, because it's about working together as a whole and not individually in our own silos, as what we've talked about in the past. There's a lot of resources that are in this room and even the ones that are online. So it's really about educating each other, being knowledgeable, and knowing when I'm working with somebody and when to identify, when do I start bringing in those other resources. Because really for that customer, it shouldn't be about going to this place or this person, this person, this person. It should be this approach where they have no idea there's 5 people involved with helping them to transition to sufficiency, but they're getting there through all of us. Back on functional oversight, again, coordinating hours of operations, looking at staffing needs, working on work schedules. They have a really strong partnership with all library districts management team. So that way they're looking to see about where customer flow is and looking at that traffic. So they do monitor the traffic. They log that hourly, and they provide that data to us so we can think about how do we better make services available. One other thing that they do is they work with the formal program managers. So as you, as individuals get awarded or organizations get awarded, what they will do is they will work with the formal program managers who are overseeing the Title I employment and training funds. So what they'll do is, if there's, their role is not about any kind of HR duties, but it's merely about supporting the staff that's there, communicating with that formal manager on need and on both sides. And in a nutshell, that's our system. Is there any questions about this piece? This will come into play as Jeannie moves through the different programs. But again, you guys can ask questions throughout this conference. Secondly, lastly, I want to let you know we have 2 individuals that with microphones. So if you do have questions, raise your hand. We have Emilio in the back over here in the purple shirt. And then we have Suzanne over here next to the window. And next is going to be Jeannie.
Come on over, Jeannie. I just want to, I just wanted to say, I think here, I might have neglected in the beginning when Jeremy was describing the system. Last night, we were having a conversation again with our local elected officials. These $18 to $20 million a year that the board directly administers and is RFPing today, these annual dollars, are part of a bigger, that system. When you look at all of those fundings, that's more like 120 million. So just think about the impact, right? That 20 million can make with or by itself or within the context of $120 million system. So just wanted to make sure those numbers are out there.
Thank you, Jaime and Jeremy. Good morning. I'm Jeannie Kennan. I am a program manager here for Title I Services. And I'm going to start with some just general specifics with the RFPs. So there is a calendar of events noted in all 3 RFPs. The calendar is the same for all 3. I'm just going to hit some high-level dates. I'm going to get into more specifics in upcoming slides regarding some of these items. The statement of qualifications, that's the first item that's due, and that is due November 27th by 2 p.m., and that's submitted electronically through email. I just want to add that you can ask questions at any time. There is an email noted in the RFP. It's soq@snbwc.org. You will be notified if you pass or fail the SOQ no later than December 14th. There's a past performance evaluation form that is to be completed by a funder or a grantor that can be a previous or current, and that is due to us by December 14th by 5 p.m., and that must be submitted by the funder or the grantor. And again, that goes to the SOQ email. The last day to submit RFP questions is December 21st by 5 p.m. That is the Friday before Christmas. Proposals are due no later than January 18th, 2019 by 2 p.m. Please plan ahead. Do not wait till 1:30 to drive over here and submit your proposals. Accidents happen. Also, if you are submitting through mail, whether it's FedEx, UPS, just make sure you get a delivery confirmation that your proposal will be delivered by the timeline. And we have a question.
Hi, Jeannie.
Hi, Vicki.
Online question.
Yes.
Do you need to submit multiple SOQs if you are responding to more than one RFP?
No, you only need to submit one SOQ per agency. Is there any more questions? Okay. We will have a public proposal opening. That same day proposals are due. That's your opportunity to come and see who else has applied for the funding. We will just be opening proposals at that time. Evaluations will begin, and that'll go January 21st through February 2019. We will conduct a technical review that is not open to the public, and you will be notified if you fail technical review only. So in this case, no news is good news. And then it'll go through a recommendation process through our meeting cycle. Negotiations will begin, and then programs will all commence on July 1, 2019. Okay, the selection process. So there's two phases. The first phase is an impartial third-party evaluation. Those proposals that receive 60% or above will move to the second phase. I also want to point out that the only item that's being evaluated at this time is the proposal narrative. The budget, any of the forms submitted are not evaluated. The second phase is the funding recommendation. There will be a selection panel, and that panel will consist of committee and board members from Workforce Connections, our members from our local elected officials consortium, Workforce Connections staff, and other community stakeholders. This is where the demonstrated ability will be reviewed, looking at that past performance evaluation form that was submitted by a grantor or funder. We will also conduct a conflict of interest evaluation. We want to ensure that none of the members of that panel will have a conflict, meaning they don't sit on any boards, they're not a relative of that agency. So we will ensure there's no conflict of interest. And we have a question.
Will the PowerPoint presentation be shared online or via email among those who attended?
Yes, the PowerPoint will be shared online either later today or probably sometime tomorrow. It will be posted to our website. Is there any further questions? Yes. Oh, wait for the mic.
If we have multiple contracts, that's loud. How many past performance evaluation forms should we request? We have multiple agencies that fund us.
I don't believe there's a limit on how many can be submitted.
And they would all be considered?
They would, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a question over here. Janice?
How far back do we go for the performance evaluation with other funders?
So Workforce Connections, for all of our service providers that have had funding after July 1st, 2015, we will complete a funder evaluation for those. So I would stick with that same 2015. Any further questions? Okay. Also, at this time during the second phase, this is where the budget will be evaluated. Just want to point out that it's not evaluated during the first phase, but it will be evaluated during the second phase. Also, during this time, we may conduct panel interviews or site visits. There may be more questions regarding your proposal, and also we may want to look at your site. Okay, the statement of qualifications. Again, this is due November 27th by 2 p.m. We're going to look at your, this form asks questions on organizational capacity, your capacity to deliver programs. It's going to ask questions if you're debarred, that you cannot receive federal funds. That would be a concern for us. We're going to look to see you have proper assurance, IT systems, any required attachments. That could be an audit, tax returns, any items that are needed. And this is a pass-fail, and you will be notified either way if you do pass or fail. And again, also there was a question, it's only one SOQ submittal per agency. The past performance evaluation form, there's actually already been some questions on this. This evaluates past performance and demonstrated ability. Again, WC will complete this form for all service providers that have had funds from us July 1, 2015 and after. And again, you're highly encouraged to submit or have funders or grantors submit forms on your behalf. And these go to the SOQ email. Question?
So we've received a stipend through ETPL for one enrolled student. Is it any funds that we receive, or is there certain like a minimum that we would require evaluation form from you?
You want to take that?
I have the form up here. It does ask for a performance period of a minimum of 6 months. So that qualification is on there. I don't know if that answers your question directly or not.
All right, thank you.
Is there any further questions? Okay. Oh, question in the back.
Do subs have to also fill out a SOQ if we're not going for the proposal, but we're going to sub?
Only the fiscal agent actually applying would need to submit one.
Okay. Oh, online question?
Do you consider federal funding to include pass-through funding?
Yes.
Yes. Can that question be repeated, Vicki? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do you consider federal funding to include pass-through funding?
Just for a
Yes.
clarification, if it does have a CFDA number and originates at the federal level, regardless of how many tiers down you are, it is still considered federal.
Okay. Proposed performance metrics. There is a form specific to each RFP. The respondent will complete. I think we've got another question.
No.
No? Okay. You'll submit one metrics table per proposal, and I just want to point out for the adult dislocated worker RFP, there is a bottom section specific to the adult reentry cluster. So just make sure if you're applying for that cluster that you're completing that information. We're going to look at enrollments. As Jeremy stated earlier, there's target populations noted in each of the RFPs, so how you're going to serve those populations, and then performance metrics, how many you're going to place into training activities, employment, things like that.
Jeannie, just to piggyback on what you're saying, the metrics you're proposing, again, are for the initial funding period. So you want to keep that in mind as you're proposing. We're looking at local, timely benchmarks during the first year for most of them, or for Youthbuild, it would be for the 39 months.
These are the federal performance indicators. There actually is an attachment posted online as well that has more concise definitions of these. I just want to point out for the adult and dislocated worker, common to those two funding streams, it's employment rate in the second and the fourth quarter after exit. For youth, it's employment or education. So placement into post-secondary education is also a successful performance. And that again is in the second and fourth after exit. For all programs, there's credential attainment and measurable skills gain. Those are for individuals that go into training or educational activities, and then median earnings for those that are employed. Shondell?
Hi. So one of the questions that I have, since you have a lot of people who are first-time grantees or first-time potential grantees, what they have these performance indicators, and obviously it's going to be based on the outcomes.
Correct.
What type of technical assistance is provided to those organizations? Because as you stated in the first slide, it's not about you, it's not about them, it's about the people who are going to receive the service. So how are those folks going to meet up to those performance indicators?
Especially if you're a new agency receiving this funding, you will receive extensive training at the beginning of the contract period with us from our program staff, our fiscal staff. The first month you can count on a lot of training activities from our office.
Right, and we are solely tasked with oversight here for, in general, that's a large part of our job. We have decades of experience here, and we're passionate about making sure you're successful. So we are here to support you.
Another question?
Yeah, Shondell's question prompted mine. If you're a first time, for the past performance, if you're new to this, how do you get that information for grantors for an evaluation from a previous grantor?
If you don't have a previous grantor that has given you funds for a performance period of at least 6 months, then you wouldn't have one to be able to submit. So it does come into play in the second phase of the evaluation process, but if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Question?
Does the state use the regression model a regression model to set the targets? And if so, can that be shared with us?
Can you explain your model you're talking about?
It's a lot of different factors, the local, from by county, by region. It talks about ethnicity, high school graduation rates.
We will look at various demographics, yes.
Okay.
Is there any more questions?
Jeannie, one second. I think Ron, would you like to address the question about the state requirements? Hang on one second.
Microphone.
Ron Hilke with the DETA, Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation. At the state level, we deal strictly with the federal performance indicators, second quarter, fourth quarter, and then the 3 for all of them. These are for the states negotiate these with the federal government. For example, they may say, well, for the adults, you'll have, 68% employed in the second quarter after exit, and the state will negotiate an appropriate rate. And the same with credentials, what counts as a credential, measurable skills gains. But these 7 factors are what the state looks at. Local boards, both North and South, have additional requirements, and they have additional metrics that they look at. But at the state level, that's what we're worried about.
Thank you, Ron. And we may institute additional benchmarks that would be, we would talk about during contract negotiations. So it would not just be these measures, it could be additional measures as well.
Is it a requirement to be a workforce development organization to apply? What if we are considering adding a workforce development program? Should we apply, or is it having a prior history of operating workforce development programs a requirement?
It is not a requirement, so we still encourage you to apply.
My question relates to the federal performance indicators. These are benchmarks, as pointed out, set by the state, negotiated with the federal government. When we submit a proposal for this, are we supposed to negotiate with you on these? Because we know these are going to be set benchmarks for you, for the local area.
Correct, yes. You will negotiate with Workforce Connections. Is there a question? So moving to the award process, once an agency or entities are recommended for funding, it will go through our meeting cycle, and this will be the March and April meeting cycle. It'll go through the programs committee, the board, and then our local elected officials consortium. These could be 3 separate meetings, or it could be a joint meeting, particularly with the board and the local elected officials. Please check our website. All of our meetings are posted on our website. Also, agendas for those meetings are posted at least 3 business days prior to the meetings. We also encourage you to have attendance at those meetings. There could be questions from our board, committee, or local elected officials. It's important that you're there to answer any of those questions. In the past, we've had individuals not be there for meetings, and that agenda item has been tabled, which would delay your approval process. Okay, any questions on the award process? So now I'm going to get into some RFP specifics to each RFP. I'm going to talk about the adult and dislocated worker RFP, and then I'll turn it over to Aletta to talk about the youth and the Youthbuild Las Vegas RFP. So as Jeremy added, the services must be broad-based to serve all populations. In the past, we've had specialized contracts that may only serve individuals with disabilities, veterans, etc. So we're asking for this RFP that, again, all services must be available to all individuals walking through the door. And again, in the past, if you were a veteran, you were referred to another agency. Our vision is one-stop shop, so services would be able to be provided at that location.
Jeannie?
Yes.
Question. Is there an announcement and then a contract negotiation, or does the announcement not occur until the contract is fully negotiated?
Okay, so the process is that once everything goes through the panel and selections have been made by that panel, then it goes to our board. So that agenda is public and posted publicly. Then the meetings are also public for the board and committees. They could be separate or combined. So that's all public, able to be listened to or attended. After those awards are finalized by all those committees, then we enter into the negotiation process at that time. So that comes after those awards are made.
And I believe Faith is going to get more into ex parte communication later on. So there's a reason why we don't have communications prior to the announcement. So she'll get in more detail on that as well.
Yeah, I want to go back to the question about specialized contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So in the rural areas, if you have discovered a need for foster youth care, would that be encumbered in your youth contract?
Absolutely, yes.
Would they have separate line?
No,
would
it
they
would just be
in school.
It would just be included in your contract, and they could be either in school or out of school.
Okay,
depending on their situation.
Just to piggyback on that, on the proposed performance metrics form, there are some specialized populations that you could propose to serve specific numbers of those target populations and notate that.
You need one more?
Oh, one more question.
Do approved nonprofits provide services inside existing one-stop locations under this particular RFP?
Yes, and I'm going to get into more detail about that in the next slide. Okay, so in the adult and dislocated worker RFP, there are 6 center clusters noted, and I'm going to take each of those separately and talk a little bit about them. So the first is the central cluster. There are 29 seats available, and this is a location-based model. So all services must take place, and the office is noted in these clusters. So there are 20 seats available next door in our One-Stop Career Center, and then this cluster also includes the Maryland Parkway Job Connect office, and currently there is 1 seat available. Just want to point out, these seats, the number of seats and locations are subject to change based on need. And for the central cluster, we're also encouraging that respondents that are interested in this cluster also submit a separate youth proposal for this cluster. Question? Oh, Mike.
So just for clarity, if you're thinking about putting in an RFP for the comprehensive one-stop, do you already have an area of where, if whoever gets awarded, is the area going to be where it is currently? Or if you have a home office, can it be out of the home office that you currently have?
For this cluster, all services are in these two locations. And then I'll get into the specifics of the north and south and the other clusters. But locations are prescribed for the adult and dislocated worker RFP.
Jeannie, 1 second, and I would add just to that in this case, yes, the board, we currently only have one comprehensive one-stop career center, and there's no plans to change that because that's where we intend to make all meaningful access available for all 17 funding streams. And so, yes, just to add that, they'll be coming up next will be the slides that will be a little different than this one. This one is the only one that will, at this point, include a comprehensive one-stop center, and it's in the location is next door.
To clarify, 28 seats, 26 seats, 28 seats in the
28 seats for
and,
Title I ADW services.
And then the variability of seating may change as needed.
Correct.
Is this something that we can propose in our proposal, or is this a negotiation after award?
It would probably be a negotiation afterwards. So, I mean, we're talking now November. By the time we get to April, those seats could have changed by then, and we'll negotiate then.
Thank you.
And a lot of it has to do, obviously, with our partners at Job Connect, and we're in discussions with them about what the seats look like at not only the Maryland Job Connect, which is on the screen now, but also the North Las Vegas and Henderson Job Connects, which are coming up in the next slides.
Janice?
So in the comprehensive one-stop, are the 28 seats just for ADW, or do that also include the partners?
No, this is just for ADW Title I services. Is there any more questions on the central cluster? I think Jaime wants to.
Yeah, and just to say that seats means, it doesn't necessarily mean that the 28 positions that are funded will have to be seated at the center, right? Because we all know that center functions includes job development. You can't do job development if you're not in a seat or if you stay at your seat. And so I think what it means is that we want the staff to provide all services that a comprehensive one-stop center has when it comes to Title I. That's the number we're targeting. And again, it is in the context of a center that has other partners as well. And just to highlight again, that number is not set in stone. It could change over the next few months, and we'll let you know. We'll keep you abreast of the conversations that are going on with the other one-stop delivery system partner programs.
And actually that number has changed. We did issue a recent addenda, and Faith is going to get into more detail about that. So this number is actually already changed from when the RFPs were released. Okay, next up is the northern cluster. So there's 7 locations for this cluster with 13 seats available. So in North Las Vegas, this includes the North Las Vegas Job Connect office, Alexander and Aliante libraries, the West Las Vegas library, the East Las Vegas library, and that library is scheduled to open in the spring of 2019. The TANF Belrose office in the northeastern Clark County Mesquite library. So rural area as well here. Janice?
So for a person applying for the North Cluster, is there an opportunity for your home office to be an affiliate one-stop so that you can provide services out of the home office?
We are prescribing these locations. Do you want to take that? I mean, the second part of that question?
So I would say that the main objective of the board is to make sure this is covered. If your proposal can do this and more because you have resources that are outside of what we're funding, yes, the answer is yes, right? But we want to make sure our direction is that the funds that we administer have to make sure if you're going for this cluster that you cover this first. If you want to propose other things, of course, that can be evaluated. And I think that's specifically the case if you have If you can bring leverage resources, of which we're going to talk about later, that is, of course, opens the doors to more things beyond the minimum that we require.
And I believe Faith is going to get more into the match portion of the RFP, so that question might come up later. Janice has another question.
I'm sorry.
Nope. Please don't be afraid to ask questions, because somebody else may have the same question.
So for someone applying for this cluster, is there a mandated schedule? And
so the operator will coordinate the schedule, and there will be non-traditional hours based on the office. The libraries currently right now do have non-traditional hours, so there could be weekends, evenings. I think Jeremy's wanting to.
No, I was just going to say, just so we talked about the role of the operator. The operator oversees the comprehensive center next door, the northern cluster, and the southern cluster. So as what we have done this year is worked with the former program managers, looked at the staffing needs, evaluated the hours of operations to determine what those schedules look like.
And for anybody applying for this cluster, will the mandated partners be in the libraries when they move in?
They may be located in the libraries, either physical presence, or it could be, as Jeremy said, a virtual presence.
And I would like to add a couple of things to that as well. That obviously the 3 Job Connects and the TANF office are not operated by our operator. They're operated by DETR and DHHS. But our operator is called upon again to create the strong connections with those centers, the referral systems. And so that's a function that you see there. You can also see it was intentful to make sure these clusters were designed around the Job Connects, because that's our desire, that there is at least 7, if not more, of the 17 partners already in there. And so as you see these clusters, that's the intent, more connection with the partners. I think Janice's question alludes to, because I see 2 seats at Aliante Library, does that mean that 2 people have to be seated for 40 hours? The short answer is no, right? The short answer is no. What we are looking for is access points. We're looking for the system to be accessible in as many places as possible, deep into the communities. How it's done, that's your job to prescribe to us how you think it's best done. But no, don't take this as it's a prescription that says, a person needs to stay in a seat for 40 hours, no matter what the flow is. That's definitely not what we're saying. What we're saying is that the hours, the amount of seats will all be dictated by need. And the operator has a role in that, of course, but so do all partners, not just the Title I, but the other partners will have a role in how that's designed.
So then will there be room to negotiate the times as long as they're non-traditional hours?
So again, the short answer is yes.
And also keep note, we have 4 library districts that all operate on very different schedules when it comes to hours of operations. I'm going to use North Las Vegas Library District, for example. They only are open to the public Wednesday through Saturdays, versus some of these others go 7 days a week. So there's definitely an opportunity to negotiate those hours, because they're definitely not needed from open to close.
And the role of the operator is to track those high peak times. So again, schedules may be set in July, and based on traffic flow, they may change later through the program year. So it could be a changing schedule in the library locations especially.
Jeannie? Yes. One online question. What is the total target serviceable population for the one-stop centers that should be considered when a solution is proposed by a vendor?
Total.
I need more clarification on that question.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Please.
What is the total target serviceable population for the one-stop centers that should be considered when a solution is proposed by a vendor?
So I can answer the first part. So the expectation is that the service provider would serve anybody walking through the door. So there is no limitation. So if somebody's coming to for example, the Alexander Library and they live in Henderson, the expectation is to serve that individual. It's customer choice where they choose to receive services.
Right, and just to piggyback, there are hundreds of thousands of potentially eligible participants here in the Valley, and we ask you to propose the total number you think you would like to serve, as long as any special population. So hopefully that answers the question.
Oh, Terry has a question. Suzanne, or Emilio's got it.
Thank you. I think I'm hung up on seats.
Okay.
And so when I think of a seat, I think of a career coach.
Mhm.
And as we all know, it takes a job developer and a workforce workshop facilitator and so on to support that.
Mhm.
So the seats, should I be taking them so literal?
I would say that the seats are primarily for a career coach function. Your job developer, program manager, those seats could be mobile, where they're moving amongst all the locations, and then the program manager could be located back at your home office facility. And then again, mobile, traveling amongst all the sites.
Thank you.
Right, just to piggyback, we're asking you to propose too how you envision that based on how many you're going to serve, what locations you're targeting. So, I mean, you can propose that.
What we are stressing is that when it comes to the desire of the board and our local elected officials is that these be the access points at the very minimum. If you want to add access points, again, that's your proposal. But we want to make sure that you understand that these are the places where the services must be available, again, and not necessarily 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? That's so again, that's your proposal, but we want you to just know if the northern cluster is your target, here's the minimum. The rest, the details, as we said earlier, are negotiable.
And two, these locations could change. Seats could change. This is all subject to change. Ron?
Jaime, again, for clarification, we understand that these are negotiating points and all that, and we're trying to provide maximum service. But my understanding is at the end of the day, the board will retain the right to say to a provider, you have to man this location, these specific hours on these days of the week. Is that correct?
Yes, if that hasn't been made clear yet, yes. Yes, that's correct. We've been, for those of you who attend our public meetings for board and LEOs, you've probably heard it, but that's where we're going. So again, this is the bare minimum that we expect. As staff, we've been directed to share with you. If you want to propose other things because you have, other resources besides the ones that we have, then by all means, we're willing to, to look at that, evaluate that in the context of how does it bring value to the one-stop delivery system, the ecosystem that you saw on that slide that we're called to convene.
Okay, I'm going to move to the southern cluster, and please, again, feel free to continue to ask your questions. So for the southern cluster, there are 13 seats available amongst 6 locations, and the areas comprise of Henderson, so the Henderson Job Connect office, Green Valley and Gibson Library locations, the Clark County Library, and then in rural Clark County, southern rural Clark County, Boulder City and Laughlin libraries. And again, as we said earlier, those seats are number of seats subject to change. Locations could be added or maybe moved as well. Tracy has a question up front.
Jeannie, just out of curiosity, are those seats already filled in like Boulder City and Laughlin? Do they have active programs there now?
Currently, yes, there are active programs there.
Thank you.
Okay. So for our rural counties, so this is Nye and Esmeralda County, we're asking that a primary service location be located in Pahrump, and this location can be proposed by the respondent. And then for Lincoln County, primary service location, we're asking either be in Alamo or Caliente, but the proposal, how you would indicate how you would serve those the entire county for each of those 3 rural counties. And you could have multiple locations again. Okay, this cluster is a little bit different. This is the adult reentry cluster, and I'd like to introduce, we have two representatives from Clark County Detention Center, Lieutenant Catherine Bussell and Officer Tom Laird. So if there's any questions specific to services inside of the facility at Clark County Detention Center, they are here. So the goal of this program is to provide pre-release services to those individuals that are incarcerated right now at Clark County Detention Center. They're not able to travel, obviously, to various office locations. So and we found too that providing services inside the facility, they're more likely to be successful post-release. For post-release services, we're asking that the respondent propose their service location so that there's a continuation of services once those individuals have been released from custody.
And just to clarify, this is one cluster, so you wouldn't be able to propose for just pre-release or just post-release. We're expecting both in one.
We have a question, Jennifer.
For the post-release, do the clients have to have been part of the pre-release?
Yes.
Can you do
Yes.
all of them?
All of it, yes.
But let me say that this is because this is a specific model based out of the Clark County Detention Center. The other clusters we just went through, post-release clients can be served out of those clusters. So there's millions of dollars that we already passed by, right? That are based in those central, northern, and southern clusters that can serve post-release clients that don't necessarily have to come from this one. They can come from anywhere. So this one's specific of you have to want to be in that Clark County Detention Center. What you asked is, can we do? Yes, you can, but not through this cluster, through the other ones.
I have a question.
Who has a question? We expect, again, the reentry, one of the things we've heard from our board, and it's specifically in the RFP, is, we all know we're in a different economic climate than 4 or 5 years ago. The unemployment bucket is what they say, the economists say, virtually empty, right? That we know there's unemployment, but there's not a lot of people that are, again, willing and ready to go to work right now like there was 6 years ago. And so alternative labor pools is one of the most important things we're going to do right now. And so to Jennifer's point, reentry has to be a strong focus. And again, this is not the only opportunity. This cluster is unique to the DC model. But we expect the proposals and the other clusters to have a strong focus on reentry, strong focus on the underemployed, because we know, again, that right now we have a bunch of people who we placed in our system over the last 2-3 years at $8, $10 an hour. That can't support a family, so we need to upskill them. And so that I think that's what's going to be different than the previous cycle. We were in a place years ago where it's like, just get people to work. And now we know that the jobs available, the opportunities available outnumber the current, supply side. And so that's what's different about this RFP. And I think reentry needs to be a huge component of that.
In regards to that, when you're looking at the clusters and if all services are to be provided out of the libraries, and you're looking at non-traditional pools of workers that need far more attention, is there going to be access to enough space to provide, courses, workshops, courses, job development? Or is that something that would be considered, yes, we can provide that at our home office, but they're going to have to travel? Because, taking an office in a box is challenging when you're, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think, again, that's why your proposal is going to be unique. We didn't want to get down to prescribe to that level, but your proposal will bring in those solutions. You can say, I've looked at these libraries, I've looked at the Job Connect in that area, I've looked at the Comprehensive Center, and my program design requires, in addition to all that, this. And so that's the part I think that makes each one of the proposals potentially unique. But as long as you hit our minimum, what you provide after that is probably what's gonna make each one of your proposals unique.
And just to give some helpful hint, or not hints, but to help out on that, the operator will work with those formal managers very closely and identify as the program year start what your needs are, so they can work with the libraries and work on rooming space, so that way you don't have to worry about, you know, calendaring something or whatever activities that you want to do.
And as Jaime said too, tell us in your proposal how you see services taking place. And if something's not going to work, we'll negotiate that with you. And I think we have a question next year, and then I'm going to go back to this side.
Yeah, I see the adult reentry, but what about our youth that are incarcerated in detention centers in rural areas? They're not considered Lincoln or county residents of that.
Yeah, Aletta's going to get
help them.
Yeah, Aletta's going to get more into the specifics on that. Are you talking like the Caliente Youth Camp?
Yes,
per se.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she'll get into more specifics about that in upcoming slides. Okay.
I would like to know how many RFPs that we can apply for. Like the adult reentry would be one I would be interested in, and then the other one would be the main one.
With all RFPs that are noted, I believe you can submit up to 13 separate proposals between adult and Youthbuild Las Vegas.
Right, so every cluster would need a separate proposal.
So if you're really ambitious, again, 13 separate proposals.
Yeah, hi. With the reentry, with all things, you know, in a perfect storm, you know, you get some of these individuals who are been incarcerated, but they have a barrier, which is, you know, maybe a felony on a record. So if I do my work and get him ready for a job, skills training, computers, how do we get around that barrier? Because that's going to really impede the, you know, getting them employment, because that's something that's being looked at on their application if they're a felon or something like that. Is there any incentivized type, you know?
I would say you tell us how that looks in your program, in your proposal.
Jeannie? Actually, I just kind of have a comment. And some of the questions, I'm a board member on programs committee, and I also am a Title II provider. And I just want you guys, as for Title I, if you're applying, to realize, you know, I think the board is looking at, you know, access to all 17 programs. And I think that there are 3 programs down in here in Southern Nevada that provide adult education. Okay, so you don't have to be your be-all, end-all. And I think that that's where we're looking to the board, as a board, moving to how are we capitalizing on the funds that are already going to 3 existing programs. So you don't have to create your own education system or anything like that. Those are existing and they're free to you. So just a comment.
Yeah, and thank you. And I apologize, Jeannie. I had seen Jill and I wanted to recognize her when I came back up. But as you can see, our board members are not just engaged during the conversation during the meetings, but she's been here now. And I know last week we had another board member as well. So it is a strong desire of the board to drive towards that integrated system vision of saying not only Title II, but you know, you can go on to say Title III and IV, and that's why the Job Connects are a huge focus on the RFP. Also, there's things beyond the 17 that are not mandated by WIOA, but are of tremendous value. DHHS here in Nevada manages the child care funds. As you all know, in the past, those of you who have provided Title I services have paid for child care out of the Title I bucket. What our board wants to see is, why don't we use the child care money to pay for child care so that more of the Title I can go to training or removing other barriers? And so that's where we're going. We have been doing the best we can to convene that system. Again, from the very top, Director Whitley from DHHS has committed to this vision and is moving partners to the system, to these locations, to address Janice's concern earlier about will the partners be there. That's what we've been working on. So not only DHHS again, but we're grateful that Director Soderberg at Dieter also is committed to this vision. And that's why we say to you, the numbers might change. What will not change is the commitment of fulfilling this integrated system that Jill mentioned earlier.
Oh, and we have a question out front.
We have 3 over here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So my question is, of the 17 partners and the service providers for those, when is that information, where do we look for that information of who those folks are? Does it happen around the same time? Are they already identified?
So they're all identified. They are the mandated partners through the Department of Labor. But if you want to get more information on the website, on our website, there's a resource link where all the RFPs are located, and you can get all that information on all the different partners.
Okay,
And I
Jeannie,
think we have
online
some
question.
online questions.
Yes. Historically, how many people have been served or have come through the doors of your locations and programs? This is for adults and displaced workers.
Okay, I'm actually going to let Brett, do you want to take that question?
So traditionally, the One Stop Career Center, we see several thousand unique customers per month out of the One Stop Career Center. Typically, I can tell you that they'll show up through our doors at least twice on average. Elsewhere in our system, in terms of total number of enrollments, we'll do roughly 2,000 to 3,000 Title I enrollments per year. And, that changes based on funding, how much training we have to do, to kind of give you scope on what the total system looks like.
Is that it?
I had a question specifically to post-release in Clark County Detention Center. What is the restriction access as far as providing services inside the detention or the facility, as opposed to, for example, tools, any training or anything like that? What are the access restrictions for those incarcerated?
I'm actually going to let a representative from CCDC answer that question.
So basically what we do for our program instructors now is we ask them to provide information, do a background check. They'll have to pass a background check to be able to have access into the facility. Depending on what the program is, we have a culinary program right now that does have access to tools and stuff like that. So it's going to be based on your program and the approval through our chain of command.
Oh, we've got another question.
Is providing vocational training pre-release a requirement?
I wouldn't say it's a requirement. I would answer that by you tell us how that looks in your proposal. I would say that it could happen both pre-release and post-release, depending on the participant's needs.
Question?
Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to, oh, we've got one more question, Lizette. So close.
Sorry. Will we have access to know release dates to know which clients would be a better fit to enroll to see about post-release and pre-release?
We do work closely with CCDC to identify those individuals that could qualify for, or that would be a best fit for the program. We do work closely with them. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Aletta, and she's going to get into the specifics on the youth and the Youthbuild Las Vegas RFPs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aletta Muzorewa. I am one of the contract administrators here at Workforce Connections, and I would like to welcome you to my first Bidders Conference. Like Ginny stated, I'm going to cover the youth specifics as it pertains to the clusters around the RFPs. And I know so many questions that have already come up might already be in my presentation, but don't hesitate to stop me and ask if you have any questions.
Aletta, I have one question. Aletta.
Yes.
Project Help Nevada is already approved to provide pre-release services inside. It took 6 months to get approved. Will new applicants take this much time?
I'm going to have to call a friend.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, Vicki.
Project Help Nevada is already approved to provide pre-release services in the Clark County Detention Center. It took 6 months to get approved. Will new applicants take this much time?
did it say Project what?
Project Help Nevada. Project Help Nevada. Help.
Oh, okay. So who's that directed to? As us as administrators, or as the Clark County Detention? Okay.
To reentry.
Okay.
Our
You walked
intention
out?
is that it would not take that long. I know I can speak for those of us here to say that would not be our intention, but we may need to parking lot that until we can get more details.
Yeah, there might have been specific items that were requested that delayed the process. Again, as Marianne said, it's not our intent for it to take that long to get services in a facility.
Okay. That being said, we are going to continue with the youth center clusters. I know you've heard this term in the past presentations. Services must be broad-based to serve all populations. This is a theme that you're going to be hearing throughout all of our presentations. The first cluster that I'm going to talk about is the central cluster, which you've already heard about. That will be the comprehensive one-stop, which is next door. And for this particular cluster, there are going to be 3 to 5 seats reserved for the youth program. The respondent that applies for this particular cluster is highly encouraged to also submit a separate proposal for the adult and dislocated worker. Any questions? Because I do know that the seats were quite a hot subject matter earlier on. Thanks, Jeannie, for covering that, so I don't have to. Okay, the next clusters I'm going to speak about are the northern and the southern clusters. Again, you've heard what the northern and southern cluster encompass, but for this particular cluster, West Charleston Boulevard serves as the delineating boundary between the north and the south. The respondent has the ability to actually propose for the location. Charleston Boulevard, again, is the boundary line. In the northern cluster, Mesquite as a rural is a component that goes with this particular cluster. So you have to keep in mind with the proposal that you will have to serve Mesquite as part of your proposal. The southern central is Boulder City included as a rural, and Laughlin as well.
May I 1 second? I think it's obvious there, but it probably worthy to highlight now that, as you can see in the youth clusters, we're not designating facilities or physical locations. That's the big difference between the ADW RFPs and the youth ones. We have kind of learned over the last few attempts that it doesn't always mean that youth can be served in the same locations, and there's some, and so for that reason, again, here you can see you have the freedom to propose the best locations that you think would best meet the needs of the youth, and they don't have to be the same locations that we're delineating as to serve the general population, right?
That is correct. And one of the things that actually you just reminded me that we need to speak of is the idea of being broad-based means you do not send a youth that comes in with a juvenile justice on their background to another provider to serve them. You have to be prepared. If it's a foster youth, you also need to be prepared to serve them within that location.
And I just want to make a little clarifying statement here that on the ADWs, those seats are overseen by the operator. When it comes to the youth programs, it's merely about the partnerships and them developing the availability of services that can be leveraged within your programs.
Any clarifications needed there? Okay. Back to the rural counties for the youth. And I know that Lorna had a question regarding that. You can select your location to serve these youth. However, it needs to be primarily located in Pahrump if you are in Nyan Esmeralda County. And in Lincoln, it has to be in Alamo or Caliente. Lana has a question.
All right, in the rural areas, we kind of run into these young people are coming to us from Clark County, from Reno, all around Nevada. And the big question is, how do we service them? Because they are not considered Lincoln County residents.
Jeannie's gonna jump in and assist with that.
I would say that you'd have a strong referral base. You might provide information on what programs are available once they're released, because they may be housed at Caliente Youth Camp for a short period of time and then released back to Reno. So they need the information on what services are available up north once they're released. So it might be a strong referral. It could be, yes.
May I jump in, Jeannie? Also, again, not being the expert in policy, but I know that when it comes to state lines, it's very clear. When it comes to local workforce area lines, north and south, it's very clear. But I'm still struggling why in our local workforce area of 4 counties, Clark, Lincoln, Nye, and Esmeralda, why couldn't somebody who has a physical address in Clark, be enrolled and served by you, an entity in Lincoln? Is there something I'm not aware of?
No, they could be served, but again, you could provide services while they're at Caliente, but you have to have a strong program or process for how those services are going to continue once they move back to either Clark County or up north to Reno, because you may not be able to provide those services once the youth is released from that center.
But if you do have a participant come to you for some reason where their actual address is in a different county, you can serve them. It's a state-based requirement.
What you say?
Okay.
No, I haven't.
The next item I'm going to cover is the youth reentry cluster, which came up again in the
You sure?
adult
'Cause I'm on
dislocated
mute.
worker. For our particular
I'll come in there when I'm on.
youth program, there's a pre-release that happens in Spring Mountain Youth Camp. And the post-release, you can choose the location for this for the services for the youth after release. The key component is to make sure that you have a continuation of services, and this is going to be based on what programs you offer during the incarceration, and also to make sure that when they are released, that you continue the engagement. Any questions around the youth reentry?
There was a question earlier if training services had to take place inside the facility, and I would say that the same answer applies to this program. It's based on the needs of the youth. So again, training could take place while they're at the mountain or after they're released.
The last component I'm going to cover is the Youthbuild, which this is a fairly new program to us. We had Youthbuild in the past, but this is our own Youthbuild Las Vegas model. This is a very prescriptive model. You can, as a respondent, provide the location that you're going to provide services out of. And the main thing to note for this particular program is we are focusing on out-of-school youth, 18 to 24, that have no diploma, high school diploma or equivalent. For this program, you are going to be mandated to provide concurrent services to make sure that this participant does get the education component to get their high school diploma. At the same time, they need to be getting some training for construction skills and for them to be able to enter the apprenticeships program at the end of the program that is related to construction fields. Leadership development and skills also need to be happening in tandem as well as the civic engagement. And this is going to be incumbent upon you, the respondent, to tell us what that looks like. What is leadership development to you? What is civic engagement? The other key component to note here is that this is a 3-year program, which is a 3-month startup period, which you can see from the program timing there. And the 3 months, I said 3 years, 3 months. The 3 months is intended for you to be able to do the recruitment and the enrollment for the first cohort.
So One of the questions about leadership development and life skills centers around WIOA's act dealing with entrepreneurship. That is one of the things that I think is a huge miss a lot of times. And when you talk about the directing it toward the services of the youth and what the youth need, what I found as an employer is a lot of times they don't have the critical thinking aspect. And that's the part that I think comes not just through leadership and development and life skills, but there's supposed to be an entrepreneurial component, and I don't see it ever in any of these slides. So can you speak to, because I was asked a couple of times to do entrepreneurial training, but we don't know how that fits in. I don't understand how that fits in. And we got a lot of entrepreneurs at the Urban Chamber and such. So how do we make sure that that component is addressed?
Okay, one of the things that we actually have is on our website. We have a resource for the Youthbuild RFP, and you could get some ideas on what that looks like from that resource link. And I'm sure Jaime might have some additional comments as far as that goes.
No, I would say that Chandel is right. It goes beyond the Youthbuild model, right? In this case, you can get specific answers on how an entrepreneurship component would fit within the Youthbuild model. But I think Chandel's point is it goes beyond that. The WIOA Youth RFP that we just passed, the one with the Northern and Southern, that should have it. And so again, that's something that you get to propose to us. How do you include entrepreneurship? How do you get the chambers involved? How do you get businesses involved? Those are the things that we want to hear from you. So that's a great point. And so I think again, on this particular model, on the Youthbuild, we have, as Aletta referred to, a 9-year history of having a Youthbuild program here in Las Vegas, but it was a direct grant from DOL under the Youthbuild name. And so this is the first time that we're taking, because we lost that grant, we're taking WIOA annual formula youth money to be able to fund this model. And we're doing it because, again, we have heard from our board that, and what we all know is no secret, over the next few years, construction is going to boom again in Las Vegas if it's not booming now. And so we're trying to create a talent pipeline for the apprenticeship opportunities here in the Valley. And so this Youthbuild is a pre-apprenticeship, something that is trying to fill that gap. We have always heard that there is a population that can't access apprenticeships. They're missing something. And so this is trying to meet that and fill that gap. And our first attempt, again, is this. It could be scaled up depending on how successful it becomes. So, Chandel, I hope.
No, I wanted to elaborate on that only because what people get confused with is they're thinking that we're trying to make everybody entrepreneurs. No, we're trying to infuse some of the skills, just like my military skills transferred out to gaming and then transferred to entrepreneurship. Those skills transfer into a very productive worker for us as employers. The other thing that I think is important is that Nevada Contractors Association, I work with them on their steering committee, and all of those contractors want to make a connection to this as well. I know you got Guy Martin on the board now. He's a former president of AGC. So I think it's important that when we have these discussions, these providers understand that the partnerships with not just with the unions, because everybody kind of like runs and says, I'm a partner with the unions, but the contractors are one to do the hiring long term. So I think that we need to make sure that in that component, we have entrepreneurial training for soft skills, as well as a connection with the contractors, because those are the guys doing the hiring.
You make a great point, and I appreciate it. I think one of the things we hope to do today is have some time for those of you that can stay to let yourselves introduce, yourselves, to each other, because this is exactly right. This is where you can find out who might be able to be a good partner for your proposal, right? It could be, again, a chamber. It could be an apprenticeship program, whether union or non-union. And so, yes, I think this is where I heard once also that, if we're not teaching young people these entrepreneurship, the street will, they'll learn how to hustle over there. And so you're right, Chandel, we got to teach them how to hustle the right way here. And so, yes, I think entrepreneurship is something you see in WIOA, and it should and can be a piece of your proposal. That's what's going to make the proposal, I think, unique. and how you highlight that. We didn't want to, again, be prescriptive at this level, but I appreciate that you brought that up.
Yeah, and you just spoke of the entrepreneurial activities as they pertain to leadership development. One of the things that I would just want to make sure that I highlight is the concurrent activities. What does that mean? What does that look like? You can articulate that in your RFP. However, these activities need to happen in tandem, meaning you don't do a training and they complete and get their diploma, and then you start an entrepreneurial or professional leadership development separately. It needs to be a component of what they do throughout the entire process in the first year of service. The third year, if I might highlight, is the follow-up service. That's when you follow up to make sure that they are successful in from the program year. Any questions around Youthbuild Las Vegas? And again, the resource link on our website will provide you with a little more information as far as any specific questions you might have or any ideas of what that could look like as you write the RFP.
So it says that the student has to, be looking or seeking a high school diploma or equivalent. Is there any stipulations on how they do that? Do they have to do it through adult education, like a Clark County School District school, or can they do that online?
That would be something that you can propose and let us know what that looks like.
I know for quite some time, I know that Youthbuild had a location over at the adult education on Desero's site. Is that something that they can do the construction training at, or does it have to be certified training?
So let me take that, I guess, because you weren't here back then, right?
No.
So yes, that was a model that that the board ourselves built. We built the partnership with the school district. We proposed the construction training certificate, and Youthbuild Las Vegas and DOL said, yes, we like your model. We're going to fund you. We're looking for you to do that now. If you want to be a proposer for the Youthbuild Las Vegas, there are some things that you can't avoid because the model is prescriptive on its own, the national model, but you get to tell us where and how those components are going to take place, which high school, which location, online, not online, what kind of construction, experience. There's a component in there about real hands-on experience. They go and build houses in the past we had a partner with Habitat for Humanity, and they were building houses and earning while they were learning. That's part of that model. They get paid. And so, again, I think that's what the uniqueness here will be, where the proposals will probably be either, stronger or not than the other, depending on those partnerships that you got and build and you propose to us.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, the RFP is stating we should provide direct entry into registered apprenticeship programs. Has Workforce established any specific partnership supporting the direct entry to maybe waive any of the requirements? I know that it's a requirement for them to even apply for a high school diploma. So when two of our participants actually receive a high school diploma or high state, they wouldn't even be eligible to apply for the apprenticeship programs.
So with that wording, direct entry, we could spend 20 minutes dissecting what that means in the world, but it's right out of the language that describes not just Youthbuild, by the way, but Job Corps. Job Corps and Youthbuild, again, are two national models which the apprenticeships, again, grant what is called direct entry. Do we have a member of our board? Last time they were here from our apprenticeship programs. I don't see them, right? But they could describe it maybe something like this, where if I have a Job Corps or a Youthbuild graduate, they come to the top of the line. That's kind of how they would say it. And I'm not an expert to know what that means, what the top of the line, but they say they recognize a Job Corps or Youthbuild graduate as one that has completed the minimum qualifications to start their apprenticeship. So they take that as a guarantee that, oh, okay, you're a graduate. That means, you're not down here anymore. I'm pretty assured because you graduated from those programs that you meet my minimum requirements. And so they have that preference, if you will, into the program.
So the building.
Can I just
absolutely
add something real quick on the question you had about having a high school or diploma or equivalent? in order to graduate from the Youthbuild program, that is something that you would have to have. Like that's the whole point of this program, is to get them their high school diploma or equivalent and construction training at the same time. So once they do that, then they would graduate the Youthbuild program and be ready for the pre-apprenticeship, or ready for the apprenticeship.
Perfect. So the building trades are going to put all of the graduates to the top of the list as a priority.
Yes, that's the intent. So again, and this is not just something to Southern Nevada, right? This is a national thing where apprenticeships look at Youthbuild and Job Corps graduates as the pick of the litter, if you will, somebody who they know they don't have to remediate or prep because they went through these programs and met the things Faith saying, the minimum, you know, we make sure if you follow the prescription, then they're ready. So we, yes, we're having conversations. 3 of the apprenticeship programs are represented on the Workforce Connections board. They're colleagues of Jill, and they are organizing already dialogue for us to with the rest of the apprenticeships, because we want to be broad and not just union, but also non-union apprenticeship. We also are dialoguing with the, and gonna have more dialogue with the state apprenticeship council, which regulates the apprenticeships. And so all of it in the hopes that this and whatever comes out of this is effective, right? Because we don't want to run this if it doesn't end in the placements you just described. And if that was your question, yes, if that's the goal, we're going to prep we're going to do our part to make sure that if, you know, one of you runs this program, it effectively ends up in placement in apprenticeship programs. That's the goal.
Perfect.
Shandor has a comment.
Yeah, and Jaime, you know what? I wear so many hats, and I blame Irene because she got me into a lot of stuff. The biggest thing that you guys as providers have to understand is that is not just the job of Workforce Connections. If you want relationships with those employers, I believe that the 18 million or the whole however many million, you have to develop those relationships with those employers, and then you lobby on behalf of those youth that you are bringing to the table, because there's only so much that they're going to listen to Workforce Connections because it looks a little self-serving. You guys are supposed to be lobbyists for these young people. So I think the biggest thing that you can do is develop a relationship with these employers, make sure that you have the connections, make sure that you can move them to the top of the list, because what we've learned is that those relationships is how it works better. It does not work when we hear from Workforce Connections, or if we hear from the case managers, and I know a lot of them in my office every week with my wife. If we don't hear from them, then we feel like that person is not even worth your time, so why are they worth our time? So I'm just giving you the real from the employer side.
Thank you.
Last question. For the home, for either shelter or the low income, is that a requirement to have it set up prior to applying? So figuring out the location and having the specifics of the area that we plan to build the home?
So no, it is a requirement that they do at least one house. Like Jaime said, in our prior years with Youthbuild, we did partner with Habitat for Humanity, and that is part of that 3-month planning period that you see that we're going to give you. So this is 39 months. So it's 3 years and 3 months contract, which we've never done before. So this is a pilot program for us as well. But in that 3 months, you're required to solidify your partner of where you're going to build your house, where you're gonna, and it doesn't have to be build the whole house. Just, I want to put that out there.
And it also doesn't have to be a house. It could be a community center, a bank, a commercial center. It's really construction.
It's a low income.
Yep.
It needs to help low income families. Is required by
Yeah.
Youthbuild.
But it could be a community center for low income as well, or
And you might want to have a contingency plan as well, because sometimes with construction permits, things change. So don't put all your eggs in one basket with one location.
Yeah, so the location isn't necessarily required, but we would hope that before the 3-month planning period that you're reaching out to find a partner to partner with.
Yeah, and by the way, Habitat for Humanity, I don't know, they're here, but I spoke to the chairman of their board, and they were disappointed that Nevada was among several Western states that lost the Youthbuild grants. Immediately after the last election 2 years ago, was there was kind of again, for whatever reasons, the Western states lost some grants. And so they were happy to hear that because our board wants to have a meaningful investment in a talent pipeline that will feed construction for this next decade, that Youthbuild is back as an idea. And so if you don't know who to call, I would start with, Habitat for Humanity, but there's more.
Okay. One more question.
So I know a lot of times youth are looking to get, their diploma, and it's a 39-month commitment. Does it have to be, so is it very concrete where they have to be actively enrolled, or sometimes, how youth tend to fall away and then come back? Is it just a calendar date of enrollment, or is it an active 39 months?
I'll take this one. It is, if you can, it's kind of hard to read, but this is a cohort-based model. So each cohort, we're requiring you to do 2 cohorts, and each cohort gets 2 years, period. They get a year of active engagement where they need to graduate the program in that first year, and then they have a year of follow-up to get employment, apprenticeship, into the apprenticeship or construction-related employment. So you have a year to help them get their GED, diploma, and that. And so it's a cohort. So they all enroll at the same time, and they all finish at the same time, hopefully. It's not like our normal programs where they come in and out of the program.
That's true. Not only is it different in that way, but another thing to, I think, mention to you is, even though we've picked construction for all the reasons we just talked about, we all know, we drive by I-15, we see Raider Stadium, the Las Vegas Convention expansion, the new resorts that are coming up. So, and of course the housing that comes with that. But we know also that there's a lot of talk, if you hear from the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation, Director Manny Lamar, talking about, and the State Apprenticeship Council, about expanding apprenticeship opportunities beyond what we call traditional apprenticeships or construction. And so a Youthbuild model has used to be very specific on construction, but they've opened that up, and they said, we're open to other things like healthcare and manufacturing and cybersecurity IT. So again, right now, we know this is a sure thing, construction, but as we build it, we're open to the ideas of, because Youthbuild is as well, the model opens up beyond construction to piloting some things, and maybe one day being a talent pipeline, not only for the construction apprentices, but also other apprentices that might be significant here in Southern Nevada.
And just to piggyback on what Jaime said, there's actually over 80 registered apprenticeship programs within the state of Nevada. So there's a plethora of opportunities.
Yeah, I have a question. On this, we talk about them receiving their high school diploma. We already know that we're going to partner with school districts, adult education for that. What about the construction component? Who or where would we go to get the education portion for that?
Can you repeat the question, please?
That was a lot. Basically, I want to know about the education component for the construction. Who comes up with that? Is it the contractor? Is it the service provider? Who comes up with that?
So that's very prescriptive in the Youthbuild model. If you look at the Youthbuild USA model of what credentials are acceptable, you'll find them there. And so again, there's also, people here in town, like I said, who have worked with this model, right? Habitat for Humanity is one of them. But again, I think most of your questions would be answered by just diving into this Youthbuild model, the resources that we gave there, and their own website. You can see all the options that you have. Again, some of it you don't have an option. They must get a GED equivalency, but which construction, certification or training you give them is a little bit customizable as long as it meets their minimum. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, right now, MC3 is sounding like something that I remember, a certification that is part of the Youthbuild program, MC3. I don't even know what that is. If there's anybody from construction here, please help me. But
I was going to say, when we ran it in-house, we had the HB Pact, and we also had, I don't know what it stands for, but it was like CCRC.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I'm
there's
not
a-
construction. I just know that they got that certificate. And just another, to piggyback onto that answer, again, that's something that you're going to tell us how you plan to do the construction part. You can partner with somebody to help with construction. You can hire a construction trainer in-house to, if they have the right credentials. So again, that's something that you would prescribe to us on what you plan on doing.
I have a question. Does it have to be construction for the 3 months, 3 years? Is that something that is required for this particular pilot, or can you integrate construction with something out of the 80 different apprenticeship programs?
At this time, we're doing just construction.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because Brent also told me, make sure you clarify. I share with you more information because we believe, we hope and believe that this can expand. But for now, yes, we want to concentrate on construction because we know it's a sure thing. But we're going to monitor it closely, and who knows if year 2 or the next cycle, because as you can tell, if everything goes well, about 2 years from now, we'll be coming out with another RFP so that the cohorts keep going every year, because this only funds 2 cohorts. And so while this award will cover the 3rd year that covers cohort number 2, if we want to have one every year, we'll have to come out with a different RFP, right, to sequence in. So that's why I share that, to let you know that we're trying to line up with this vision of a new Nevada that is has multiple sectors that could have apprenticeships.
I think there was a question.
Actually, I have 2 questions. We talked a lot about Youthbuild. Are the performance indicators for Youthbuild different from the normal performance indicators?
The common measures that we talked about earlier, that Aletta talked about for youth, are in effect for Youthbuild, but we also ask that you propose metrics that are specific to Youthbuild, that have to do with, the numbers that obtain employment or post-secondary education, construction-related employment, things like that. Those are specific to this program.
And the second question, it's defined here, out-of-school youth ages 18 to 24, but for the youth RFP, how do you define youth? 14 to 24, 16 to 24? What?
So for the youth RFP, in-school youth is defined 14 to 21, and then out-of-school youth is defined 16 to 24. And there's actually more specifics regarding those definitions in that RFP as well.
It doesn't appear like we have any more questions. That being said, I'm going to introduce Faith, who already has been up here for a minute. It's okay.
I thought she was
to
done.
do the fiscal components.
I jumped the gun. I thought she was done. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about the fiscal elements, and I'm going to turn it over to Shondell because he already talked about this slide about partnerships. But yes, we think that this is not necessarily the partnerships that he was talking about, but you still need those partnerships, employer partnerships. This partnership is if you have come here and now you feel really overwhelmed and you're like, this is way too much, I can't handle this, but I can do some components of that. This is where you would come in. You would meet with somebody else here that maybe you saw asked a lot of questions, and you'd say, hey, I can do this really well. I would like to partner with you if you could be the fiscal agent. That one fiscal agent would get the money, and they would be the one writing the proposal and submitting the proposal, but you would qualify as a partner with them. To qualify as a partner, you must be written into the scope of work. You must contribute something to the program. You can't just say, hey, I'm a partner, and then do nothing. Then you must maintain documentation regarding that partnership, like meeting agendas that you met with each other, that you actually talked, and not somebody else just wrote you into it and now you're a partner. And then once you get the award, you will have to complete the partner procurement form, which we will request, which means that you don't have to follow the normal procurement requirements that we do because you're already written in. Before I go on, is there any questions on partners? Yes.
And just to clarify, in this case with the partnership,
the statement of qualifications is only completed by the fiscal
Yes.
agent?
Correct.
Okay. Any other partners being written to the RFP are not required to pass or fail that SOQ?
No.
What about the, sorry to follow up. We know there's a performance evaluation as well. Can partners submit performance evaluations along with the fiscal agent's performance evaluation? Past performance evaluation.
Form. I don't have an answer to that. Can
I would say I don't believe so. That this needs to be focused on the fiscal agent.
So in that basically, so the fiscal agent then, or the person leading the partnership is then, they're responsible for passing and failing the SOQ, and they're also responsible for passing that part of the evaluation for the past performance. That's the only thing that can be considered in that past performance evaluation.
Past performance is not a pass-fail. It's just incorporated into the second phase of the evaluation. And, you know, if we need to parking lot that, we can definitely provide clarification for that afterwards, because I don't know that we were anticipating that question. So.
Sure. Just in the case that we would want to see if, you know, in a strong partnership, obviously those partners, even if they're not the fiscal agent, are obviously bringing a lot of strong performance to the table. And so we want to be able to clarify that outside of maybe the narrative.
Sure, and I would definitely say that we do want to see that for sure outlined in the narrative, but ultimately the fiscal agent's responsible, but we'll parking lot that and clarify.
Thank you.
Are support letters being asked for these submissions?
I will get to that later, but no.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I will move on to the match requirement. So a lot of federal funds, I think almost all of them, normally have a match requirement. We in the past have not, but we are going to implement it this year because as an area, we are wanting to bring more resources to the table. We want, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but so we have two separate types of match requirements. We have a cash requirement and a non-cash. The cash requirement is you actually have to outlay cash. You have to spend money for it to be counted. An in-kind match requirement is a donation. Somebody's letting you use their building, or they donate bus passes to your program. So you didn't actually pay for those bus passes, but you can use them on your participants. So the way it's calculated is it's 2% or 3% of non-participant expenditures. So what that means is if you got $1 million award and in your budget, when you're creating your budget, you choose to use half of that money on participants, and the other half is going to staff, overhead, all that fun stuff that you still need to do the program. So that would give you $500,000 that is in non-participant expenditures. And so it would be 2% of that, which is $10,000, and 3%, which is $15,000. So I tried to spell that out, give you an example, because it can be kind of confusing. So in order for it to be an allowable expense, it has to be allowable. Or in order for it to count as match, it also has to be an allowable expense. We, as much as we like to travel into foreign countries, you can't give that as a bonus to your employees and say, we're going to take a trip and use it as match. It's not allowable, so it can't be allowable as match as well. Other things that don't count are federal funds. That is a federal requirement. You can't match federal funds with federal funds. So if, like in the instance of the bus passes, if you had another grant that was a federal grant, as Marianne mentioned before, if it has a CFDA number, that's federal. That's the easiest way. Look at your agreement. If it has a CFDA number attached to it, that is a federal program and you cannot use it as a match. Another thing that you cannot use as a match is receipt of funds with no outlay. So if somebody gave you $5,000 as a donation to your organization, that does not count as match until you spend that $5,000 on allowable expenditures that you could have used grant money to spend.
Hi, Faith. So with the 2% non-participant, the 2% cash,
Mhm.
talk about allowable expenditure. in a contract, an allowable expenditure and a cost reimbursement is, let's say we fronted staff salary as an actual expense with cash.
Mhm.
That's going to be an allowed expenditure, right? Because it's a staff expenditure.
Yes.
We're paying staff salary.
Yes.
Okay. So anything contained within a contract that you say is an allowable expenditure and we have the cash to back it up, that's what we're able to count it as?
So if you had staff salaries, and that person was working 100% on our program, but you only decided to bill half of their time to our program, that other half, because you did have a cash outlay, would be you could be considered match.
Thank you.
Over here.
Page 19 of the RFP, prior investments. What is that referred to? Where it says, please note that neither prior investments nor federal resources may be counted towards the matching funds threshold. What is prior investment?
So if our program runs July 1st through June 30th for that first year, if you were given a destination and you bought bus passes in right now, you couldn't use that as a match. Any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So if your program is, your fiscal agent is overseen by the county commission, how would you use your 2% match? Would the commissioners pay 2% of per se salary? Because a lot of their money is.
Marianne, do you know?
Well, I know you'd have to talk to them and determine that. So we're looking for an outlay that is not reimbursed.
I think she's saying the county commissioners might be.
Yeah, it's going to be specific to everyone. So you'd have to determine if they're able to provide that match or not, and if it's federal or non-federal.
But yes, if oversight can be used as match.
So now I'm on to the 3% in kind.
Okay.
I told Faith that I'd only ask easy questions. So who's quantifying the amount of this? We quantify it in our proposal of what this in kind is, and then you debate us with foam swords over how much it is?
So you would, again, when we get to the budget, there's on the budget form, there is formulas that calculate it. So to tell you how much you need and if you're meeting it in your budget. If in your budget you put something, I don't know, like I said, that wasn't allowable, we will negotiate this. And if we don't feel that your match is allowable, we will tell you you need to get something else to match. And again,
Would this come up in the evaluation phase? I know there's a point in the evaluation phase where the committee can come back to the providers and ask questions, or is this post-award negotiation?
It could be both.
Both, okay.
So just to recap, this match can come from many different places. It could be from unreimbursed indirect expenses. It could be from not billing all of your staff time. I mean, there are millions of different places this could come from. Rent. We haven't always allowed rent in the past. If you've gotten used to not be able to bill for that, maybe you'll just keep going that way and take that as your match if you've been in our system before. So really one of the intents of us moving to this model is to give you more options and flexibility about what resources you'd like to bring to the table, instead of us being very prescriptive and saying it must be rent. So now we're opening it up and saying, yes, we do still want resources coming, but now you get to determine what that's going to look like.
Any other questions?
Straighten up and head.
Oh.
Are we able to use the same match within different proposals?
No, if it's used as match for, I mean, you could use the same type of match, but let's just say, take Marianne's example of rent as match. It would only be the portion related to your program. So if you had 3 programs, that rent cost would have to be split over 3 programs. You couldn't count 100%, 100%, and 100%.
But we could use like the building per se as depending on the areas that we're using.
Yes.
Right, and just to piggyback, like you couldn't bill the same charge to 3 different grants. You couldn't count the same expenditure as match, the exact same. If you need to allocate or prorate, you're more than able to do that, but it would have to be direct to that proposal.
All right, so budget elements. So for the adult DW and youth RFPs, the initial funding period is July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. So your budget that we're requesting is for that initial funding period. If you do get funded, and then you could have additional 3 years renewals, so up to 4 years, and at each year we would ask for a new budget for the upcoming year. For the Youthbuild Las Vegas proposal, or RFP, it is, like we mentioned, a 39-month period, so you need to give us a budget for all 39 months. And that runs from July 1st to 2019 through September 30th, 2022. So we'll get to the, I'm going to pull up the budgets here in a minute, but on the budget summary page, there is formulas in that first page that will tell you if you're meeting these requirements that we have. The adult and DW training costs must equal 40%, the youth and the Youthbuild Las Vegas. The work-based learning, or WBL as we call it, must be 30%, and then the match requirement that we just talked about. In addition to the budgets for Youthbuild Las Vegas, there's an additional form, and it's called the 39-month cost breakdown. And again, we'll pull that up here in a second. Any questions before we actually pull them up? Bear with me for a second. No, all right. Oh, I can't read that. But anyways, so this is the RFP page. This photo needs to be bigger, guys. I'm just gonna go over here to Excel. But the budgets are on this page that you can pull them up, but I already have them open. So we'll look at the ADW one. Again, I'm sorry that it is so small. No, it's okay. Well. All right, so here is the first page. This page is locked for any of you fiscal people who have actually dove into the budgets already in this last week, since RFP has been released. It's fun and exciting, right? We have, this adult budget has 13 pages, this summary page, and then if you can see, there's different tabs, and maybe I will have Marianne drive, because this thing, I can't use the mouse and, okay. So the highlighted areas right there that you see in yellow, those are the requirements that we were just talking about. So you have the first one is your training requirement, and the 40% training requirement is occupational skills training, which must be on the ETPL, your OJT trainings, which is on the job training that you will need your employer partners, and any training related supportive services that go along with those trainings. That definition, I believe, is in the RFP, or it's on our website, of what specifically counts as a training related supportive service. The state has given us very specific directions on what that is.
It is in the RFP.
Okay, yes. So can you scroll up just a little bit? So each one of these boxes that have $signs in it links to one of the other tabs. So like I said, this is locked and it will self-populate as you go through it. If you just want to click on one of the other tabs. So here is the training related supportive services. So you would fill in 1 through 20 of what you want. Like we have a sample in there. So if you have bus passes, it should be pretty easy if you know Excel.
Right, and you can hover if you see a red triangle and you'll get some little interesting things there.
But if you typed in line 1 bus passes and they cost $65 and you're gonna give out 200 of them, it would self-populate over there in that column E, $13,000. And then that would flow into the summary page. And like I said, once you fill it all out and you feel comfortable, go back to that summary page and it'll give you lots of little errors and say, nope, you didn't meet this requirement. No, you need more money here.
Right, so just to take away, if the summary page is not right, don't click in there because it'll just keep dinging at you. Go back to the supplemental tab. That's what you need to change to make the summary page work right. Be sure if you have contracts too, you put them down here. Any kind of contracted services normally have a separate section at the bottom.
And then Marianne, so the youth budget and the ADW budget follow the same template. The ADW budget has 13 pages because it has the training related supportive service tab where the youth do not, because that is not a state requirement that we track that. The youth one has, if you want to go to the youth budget.
Is it up?
Yeah, it's one of the Excel sheets down there. If you go to the.
Is this right? Oh, I got lucky.
Yes, that is the youth budget.
Okay, so clicking. Okay.
So again, you still see the nice little yellow boxes, but again, they have different requirements because the work-based learning, which is your OJTs on the job training, WEXs, which is work experiences, pre-apprenticeship trainings, your or WBL job development activities, and related fringe get all counted. Can you scroll down to those requirements? So if you're not meeting that, it'll populate in that one. Just a side note, there's another WBL salaries, and that second box is we have set a requirement that the salaries and fringe related to the work-based learning can't exceed 30% of the 30%. I know that's kind of weird, but we had noticed that people were spending a lot of time and not getting results. So we want to focus, we still want you to spend the time, but we expect that your work has fruit. You reap what you sow. So if you're putting the time in, you should have WEXs, OJTs, etc. So that's another requirement in there, in addition to the cash match and in-kind match. Again, this page has 12, or this budget has 12 pages, so make sure you fill them all out. And then this is also you're also going to fill out this one if you're doing the Youthbuild.
Let me know about.
So again, this needs to be for 39 months if you're doing the Youthbuild. If you do the Youthbuild, can you go to the next Excel worksheet?
Yeah, online and on the card. So we're filling this.
Yeah, no, you were right. The first one. No, not the first one. The last one. The first one that you were on. Sorry, that one. Okay, so this form is for the Youthbuild proposal only, and this is breaking down those 39 months. Well, the 3-month planning period, and then the year 1, year 2, year 3 by cohort. Because again, we want to know how much you're planning on spending for each cohort related to the program. And again, it's just, so if you went back to the summary page for the youth budget, you see all those same, yes, those ones, titles. And so those totals should tie to your total on the budget, is what I'm trying to say. Any questions on budgets? Oh, Joe's got more questions. Thanks.
Hi, Faith. So to go back, talk about the partnership model. When you talked about in the adult disability worker budget about subcontractors, are in the case that we have a partnership RFP or a bid, is the fiscal agent completing this budget and then having the additional subcontractees submit an additional budget? Is it all go on one? Is it separate?
You, as the fiscal agent, I would highly recommend that you have them fill out a budget. But then on your budget, how much you plan to pay them would go on a subcontract line, which
So
I believe is tab C.
We're just submitting one budget.
But
then
one
and that's
budget
what-
would come to us. That may be something that we ask for in contract negotiations. It says you're planning on giving half your money to this subcontractor. Please tell us what they're going to do.
So we don't necessarily have to detail this in the budget?
No, it would just be one line. Well, you know what? Can you go back to a budget just so that if you scroll down, you would detail it right there in that narrative section.
Gotcha.
Hey, so for the Youthbuild contract, since there's a month or quarter of planning, is the WBL going to be waived for the first 2 quarters, or still going to be considered per quarter for the 30%?
It would be waived for that first 3-month planning period. It would probably not be waived for the second. Any other questions? Oh.
The tab that talks about the charging the percentage of work-based learning for staff time, is that a separate tab than, I'm trying to find which tab that was on.
It's on the summary tab. It's just a formula. There's nothing really that breaks it out except for that formula.
It's just, it has to be 30% of the max at 30% of the 30%.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, up to 30. RFP. You have to ask it to the email addresses so that everybody can hear the answer. We can't answer one-on-one questions. If you are a current provider, though, and you want to ask me a question about your budget right now that you're currently working in, that is not ex parte communications. You can still contact us on how to do your current program, not future.
Does that include CCDC?
Yes. But if I would say yes at this point. If you are reaching out to partners, but ask us the question and then we will contact CCDC to put it on the website so the answer is available to everybody.
When you submit those questions via the email, you will not receive a response to the email. The only response you'll receive is an auto response just saying that we've received your question. And again, as Faye said, all answers will be posted on our website.
Okay, so addendas. We will possibly be making addendas. We've already made 2. They are posted on our website. And it is your responsibility to check that website because we do not send out notification that we changed something in the RFP. I will mention the 2 that we have changed already, and I believe they're posted as of yesterday. Today. So the number of seats available in the central cluster, that's one that Jeannie already mentioned, is now 28. It was 33. And then the technical review form, which we're going to get into here in a minute. I just want to note on the technical review form, because if you look at it, items were taken off of that review form, but that does not mean that they're still not required. It just means that you're not going to fail technical review if you do not have it. So hopefully that helps. And we're going to go into the technical review form right now. Maybe. My clicker's not working anymore, guys. All right, there we go. All right, so the technical review is not public. It is not public, so don't show up for it. We're not going to tell you when it is. The requirements that are on that form is that you attended the mandatory bidders conference. So you're here. So yay, you get check 1. Yay. Your SOQ was approved. So again, you'll get notification if that happened. So again, check 2. That it was submitted on time. So the deadline is in the RFP, January 18th, I believe, 2 p.m. Again, if it is not 12-point font, you'll fail right there and your proposal will not move on. So make sure you check your font size. Your margin size, please make sure you check all 4 margins, because again, if you have a ½ inch on one margin, you don't move any farther. Make sure it's double spaced. Make sure it doesn't exceed 30 pages. Make sure that you have the signed affirmation certificate and conflict of interest. Again, if you submit that and it's not signed, you don't move on, because we don't have the release to send your proposal to a third-party evaluator. We need the RFP title page, because we need to know which title or which RFP you're applying for, which cluster you're applying for. And then the attachments. It was brought up before, are you going to accept letter of intent, resumes? In the past, we have asked for this. This year, we are not asking for it. And if you submit something other than what we asked for, you stop right here. So please do not submit anything else. We don't want anybody to fail. We really don't. So please be aware of these.
Can you give some examples of that?
Of what?
Submitting things, you said?
Letters of intent, MOUs, resumes, any additional attachments as far as charts. So if we didn't ask for it, don't give it to us.
I think there was another comment about letters of support. Do not submit those.
Faith, we need to make an announcement. Go ahead, Chris.
Yes, all people online, can you mute your phones or your computers, especially Michael Vinegar? Thank you.
All right. This last one is proper submittal or proper proposal submission. So this one is really important. Make sure that you do this.
Faith, sorry to hold you back one more time, but that slide already went through. And if I was a proposer, I know we talked about it within staff, you know, to be, we know that in the past, proposals have not passed the technical review because they did not meet some of those things that some would think is trivial, but my margin wasn't what it was supposed to be, right? And people say, well, how can I be disqualified as my content is so good? There's reasons for everything. The margins and the size of the fonts and the double spacing is to allow for everybody to submit, to have the same sort of room, if you will, to submit, right? If you printed it very small all the way to the edges, you would be able to provide more information than everybody else. And so, again, I think it's just important to stop here for a second and say, you know, that technical review, you can miss because of that. You can miss because you're missing a signed affirmation. People would say, you know, why would I not qualify or stop if all I was missing was a signature, right? And the reason is that's an important piece of paper because, again, it gives us the authority we need to move forward with your evaluation. So again, just take some time to look at this technical review with your staff too. Have a plan A, B, C to make sure you check it all. We have until January, right? If there's any, I know pretty soon we're going to tell you how to ask questions after today.
We already did that.
Oh, you already did? I missed that.
You missed
that. Submit a question if you are concerned about the technical review, and we'll answer it and post it for everybody to see.
And just to piggyback on that, we definitely recommend you print out this form, give it to someone not involved in the process, have them look at it, and do a double check for you. That's why we publish this form, so that you can use it as a tool.
The technical review piece, does the requirements also apply to the supplemental information that you're requesting from previous funders?
No. That if for whatever reason, and I believe somebody had asked, if we don't have a funder, what are we supposed to do? That will not prohibit you from moving forward if your funder forgets and doesn't submit it. If you don't have a funder, you will still be evaluated. You will still move through the process. All right.
Sorry, Faye. So I would just say it's important to note that if you do in your narrative tell us you had, a great performance with your previous funders, but we don't have, or the evaluators don't have the proof of that, I would say that's going to weigh and will have consequences, right? Good or bad, as it might have consequences if your narrative says something that's not demonstratable.
Correct.
So, yeah.
It will still be evaluated. It will just not hold you from
Being evaluated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing on this is proper proposal submission, which we have a whole separate slide for that because, again, we don't want anybody to fail, and this is kind of confusing. And so I'm going to be your flight attendant because I believe that everybody who has ever flown a plane knows how to pull the life jacket and get the mask on because they make these big gestures. So that is what we're going to do right now. Okay, so again, due date, January 18th, 2019, 2 p.m. or earlier. Do not be late. It is timestamped. Jeannie went over this. If there's traffic and you get here at 2:01, you stop right there. You don't even make it to technical review. Sorry.
It happens every time we do an RFP. Someone misses it by 1 or 2 minutes. Don't be a statistic. We're just urging you be early.
All right. So you're in the RFP. It does detail what needs to be on this little PDF file, flash drive, or USB flash drive, one PDF containing everything that we ask for to be on that. So you're going to put it on the flash drive. You are going to print your budget, all 13 or 12 pages. If you are a Youthbuild Las Vegas proposal, you're going to print the 39-month cost breakdown. You're going to put all those together. You're going to put them in an envelope.
Not the USB, folks. Just
Not
the paper.
USB. My USB is still right here.
Just the paper.
Just the paper. You're going to seal this. I'm
Please
not
seal
sealing
it.
right now because I don't want to waste it.
Please seal it.
Seal it, please, because if it's open like this, you fail technical review. Seal it. Seal.
You actually don't, but it won't be considered. The
No,
budget's
it says
not. It's not on there anymore.
I thought it's proper submission is. And this is part
Is it? Am I wrong?
You are wrong.
I'll admit it. I get 1 a year, so I'll take it now in public when it's recorded. All right.
Granted, if you submitted this and it was sealed and we don't know that there's a budget in there, you don't fail technical review. So if you submit a blank envelope, you won't fail.
Don't do that though.
But don't do that, please.
That has consequences later.
That
right?
has consequences later.
And I think you see all this visual aid because it's happened.
Yeah. So
multiple times.
Multiple times.
You're going to seal, like I said, seal the envelope. You're going to label this envelope that says what cluster, what RFP you're, because once these separate, we don't know which one. So you need it's all detailed in the RFP. You need your name, or not your name, your organization's name, what RFP you're applying for, if your RFP has clusters, what cluster you're applying for. Then you're going to take this envelope and put it in a bigger envelope. And then you're going to put your USB in that as well. You're going to seal this. Again, this is going to have the same labeling on it. If you're going to mail it to us, it may even be in another envelope. I don't know.
What if
If
they mail it a week before because they're very prudent and planning, but there's some kind of reason why we don't get it? The mail fails and we don't get it.
If you're going to mail it, that's your responsibility. I would definitely mail it certified so that you have a copy that you can say, no, the mailman says that you signed off on it, so-and-so signed off on it on this date at this time. Also, I would recommend spending the extra couple bucks and overnight it because, again, if there's, I know, let's just say the fires in California right now and the Postal Service is not getting from there to here. You don't know.
So if we don't get it, they fail.
If we don't get it, they fail. It is your responsibility to ensure that we have it here January 18th, 2019, 2 p.m.
And I would say too, especially if you're like Central US, East Coast, that's in the middle of winter. So mail could be delayed. So just make sure you're giving yourself enough time for it to get here.
What if we do get the envelope that contains a separate envelope and the USB, but when we plug in the USB, it's blank?
Then you did not submit the proposal. The opening is public. So shortly after, on January 28th, I believe it's at 2:30 p.m.
January 18th.
Sorry,
just to clarify.
January 18th. We will open it. So if you are hand delivering it, we recommend that you just stick around a half hour, go get a coffee, come back, and watch us open it so that you can see, oh yes, there was a file on there. You can see your competition. I just wanted to note too that if you are doing this, again, we've already mentioned that you can do 13 of these if you want all our money.
What if the USB is password protected?
You must provide the password. We must be able to get into it. It must be submitted with the proposal. We have a question over here.
The printed paper copy of the budget forms, the 13 or 14 pages, do or do not count to the 30-page total?
Do not.
And so if I am present, as you suggested, we mail or hand deliver the envelope that contains the separate envelope that contains those forms and also the USB. But I neglected to include the password. If with the submission, me standing there 30 minutes later, you will not take the password from me to unlock that USB?
I believe we said no.
If we cannot open it at technical review, then it will fail.
At public opening.
Oh, at public opening. That's true. Yes, it is the public opening.
So nothing can be submitted at that public opening that has not been submitted in that envelope.
Yes, because technically the password was submitted late after 2 p.m. If you do not submit it with
we're
that.
going through all of this for a reason. I want you to think, don't think we just don't want somebody to fail for that reason, right? But I was there and I gave you my password. The other proposals will say, that's late. It's not. So again, take all the preventive measures you can to make sure your USB works the night before and the night before that and the moment before you submit it, and make sure the password's in the maybe stuck right on the USB. And have a second person look at it all after you, and so just take all those precautions.
So just to recap, at the public opening, we will put the flash drive into a computer in public. We will make sure something is on there. We will not open the file in public, but we will make sure there's a file there. We will not open the budget envelopes at that time. That budget comes into evaluation later. So just to clarify.
So you're not opening the files at the public opening?
We are not opening the files. We are just verifying that there is a file on the drive.
What happens when you open the file later and it's corrupted?
You have failed technical review.
We're not going to do a verification that the file's not corrupted at the time?
It doesn't matter because either way it's failed.
Okay.
It's either failed at the public opening or it failed at technical review because it was not submitted. That's what Jaime has asked you to test it.
Yeah,
you're saying, did you just ask, can we come and test our USB the day before in your computer? The answer is yes. You can come test. Yes.
There you go. Yes, you can come the day before and test your USB.
Absolutely. I think if our computer doesn't open your USB, it's probably not going to open, yours. But yes, we'll do everything we can, including allowing you to plug in the USB the day before into our computers,
I'm going to say not the day of, just because I don't want 50 people here and then they say, well, I was still testing mine, so I missed the deadline.
I'm just pretty sure IT is here, but
yeah, there'll be an isolated laptop for you guys to plug the USBs in.
But I'm pretty confident that that the machine that we have, or the machines that we could use, would be incompatible, but with only one of these USBs. It's pretty unlikely, right? But again, we're not saying no to a test. They can come and test the USB.
Yeah, that wouldn't
Yeah.
be a problem.
Yeah.
All right, we have a question here, here, and then there.
On the electronic PDF on the flash drive, does a budget need to be merged into that PDF?
No, do not put the budget on the PDF at all. No budget numbers.
Is that clear on
Only-
the RFP?
It is.
Okay.
Only in the printed copy in a sealed envelope, so nobody knows how much it's going to cost you.
And that's specific for state policy, that the budget is not part of the initial evaluation. The budget, again, as you have said, Marianne, is evaluated in a second phase or later phase.
So if we come sometime prior to ensure that the flash drive works and everything, do we get some type of receipt when we walk away saying that we verified that everything was there and that it was working properly? So
I would say
we can
no.
sleep. at
Yeah, but
night.
you could switch the USB on me after you leave, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think again.
Can we leave it at that turn?
Yes.
Yeah,
If you have all your envelopes, you can seal it up and leave it, because it's that day or earlier, 2
Yep.
p.m. or earlier. So if you wanted to come a week early, that's just less time you have to write.
Yep.
If you want to do it the day before, you can do it, put it in your envelopes, or come in, test it, then put it in your envelopes
Yeah.
and submit it. And then that you will get a receipt that you had submitted by this time.
What happens if somebody decides or to submit 2 USBs?
In the same envelope?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to make a backup.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. That was part of it.
I would say that would fall under the attachments, nothing other than what we requested. It is 1 USB drive. We requested 1.
Are you guys glad I asked that question?
Well, yeah.
Don't give us
also,
2.
could it be like a copy of the file just in case? Like, could there be more than one file and it's just the same file?
The RFP states 1 PDF file on 1 USB drive, because we have had in the past multiple files and we don't know which one you want us to review.
And the type of USB drive, is it just going to be standard USB 3.0, a Type C, eSATA, thing like that?
Something that will plug into the computer. I'll ask our IT guy. I don't know. A USB drive.
There's a lot of ports out there.
I'm sorry? Yeah. Yeah, any
The answer
USB
is
drive,
any.
because they are backwards compatible. And again, I think if I was a proposer, I would feel very comfortable coming in the day before, the week before, and testing it. Or like, I think as you said, if I see that it's working on a computer here, and putting in an envelope, after that, it's pretty sure. I mean, again, the only thing that could happen is that Disney movie of those, what is the guy who broke the internet? What's his name?
Ralph.
Yeah,
It's
if
Ralph.
Ralph gets in there and breaks it.
Just to reassure you, we've had many issues cause failures. A not working USB has not been
Never
that
been
one.
the
Just so you know, just to reassure you, we've had about every other issue. But if there is a file on there, we've never not been able to open it. So feel
We
free to
had a
come in and
scare
test
a
it.
couple times because
And
we
this,
didn't know the
there was
password.
one about a password.
Well, yes, the password thing. But just so you know, your time will be well spent testing it. That's a good thing. But actually, we see more failures from not submitting everything properly than we ever do from not being able to open it. So if you're going to spend time reviewing it, review your submission, make sure you have everything, get a third party who's really detail oriented to look at it, and that's where your time would be best spent.
I just want to confirm that you do not need an electronic copy of the budget anywhere.
No electronic.
Not only do we not need it,
Thank
but
you.
it could cause you to fail. So no electronic budgets. No, no, no.
Electronic budgets.
And I've been paying attention. The budgets belong in a separate envelope.
Separate sealed
sealed envelope within another sealed envelope that also contains a USB.
Yes.
And in the front, I put not only the name of my agency, but which RFP, and if it has a cluster, what cluster.
Yes.
Jaime, you passed
both
technical
envelopes
review.
must be labeled because, again, they're going to get separated. Yes.
So we would have a separate envelope for like the youth services, youth protection services, and then another separate envelope for the adult.
So like I said, if you are going to submit for every single one of our fundings that you could apply for, you would have 13 envelopes inside of 13 other envelopes. So a total of 26.
And that's because
and 13 USBs.
And that's because the adult RFP contains multiple clusters.
The adult has 6.
And the youth one
has 6.
multiple
Youthbuild
clusters.
has
The only one
1.
that doesn't have clusters is that Youthbuild Las Vegas, right? So that's one envelope. But if you want to go after the ADW funds, there's 6 opportunities there.
Okay, so then we have one envelope per each opportunity.
Yes.
Okay.
One per cluster. Yes.
One per cluster.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
This is the time to make sure now.
Yes, yes, please ask your questions because again, everybody might have the same question and we want to get as many answers as we can. Again, if you don't feel comfortable, you can always submit it through the email addresses.
That's very important. Yeah, any question that I wish I would have asked that, you can submit it and everybody will get a chance to see it and the answer.
Just don't ask us one-on-one. Email or right now.
Right, as Faye's saying, at the conclusion of this, we enter into the start of ex parte. So just mindful, no one-on-one questions. And if you ask us a question, we might say, what is it about? And then we might say, you'll need to submit that through the email.
That's right. I heard it earlier. They can, obviously we have existing providers or existing community partners that we do business with, your training providers, and you want to talk to about any other issue, of course. It's just that we can't talk about this particular action, procurement action, without making it public. And so the way to make it public is you submit your answer, your question publicly, and we submit the answer publicly back.
There's a question over here.
Yeah, I have a question going back, not with the technical review form, so hopefully it's all right.
Yes, you can answer whatever.
So are we allowed to mix cohorts with students that are meeting for both the WIOA RFP eligibility criteria and ones with our own criteria? And this would go both with the youth one as well.
Are you trying to say, can you co-enroll people in your program and
Yes.
another program? Absolutely.
Okay.
As long as they meet the criteria of our program, you can enroll them in whatever else. That's part of the partners that we want you to bring. And then that anything that is paid for by that can be used probably as your match.
All right.
Faith.
Hi.
Online question.
Yes.
Where can I find information about the central cluster targeted geography? I have the youth services map, but I only see the north and south services clusters.
The central cluster, there is no service map. It's all of Las Vegas, all of Clark County.
Yeah, for the
it's just they're served out of the one stop next door and the Maryland Parkway.
Yeah, for the adult and dislocated worker, there is a center cluster seat chart that defines those service areas.
Which I'm assuming is on the website with the RFP information.
But I guess what the question was about, I'm guessing, was does choosing a cluster give you a limited geography, right? And we're saying no. If there's a client that lives in Henderson but ends up coming to one of the other centers,
West Las Vegas Library.
Yeah, West Las Vegas Library, we don't tell him, no, you must go be served by this other provider that bid on the southern cluster. That's not the case. So in other words, there's no geography limits that defining the ADW center clusters. It's more about physical locations because we've chosen those locations because I've as I explained earlier, the commitment of our partners to have the other programs present as well.
I do want to tag on to what Jaime just said, though. If a Henderson person did come to North Las Vegas, because that's where somebody had told them, oh, I got great help over here, you should go over here and they'll help you find a job. And they go over there and yes, serve them by all means, but also let them know that they do have services that are offered in their area where they live. So they're not driving miles and miles every time. If they still choose to stay with you because they want to stay with you, then serve them. But if they were like, oh, I didn't know that office is right next door to me.
I wanted to just bring up something real quick about the ex parte, that the operator is involved with that as well. So even though that they are overseeing the system and that oversight, they need to, any questions that are directed about the RFP and any design around RFP and program design needs to go through the board through that email. They are unable to answer those questions.
Who was first? All right.
Okay, I
Ladies
have,
first.
how would, we haven't mentioned STEM in the build of the design. Is that just something for us to do since it does require its own scope of work, or is there a whole different?
I would say you tell us how you see that fitting into your program, into your proposal.
Two questions. First question, in the example that you gave previously regarding an individual who wants to come to a provider that's, say, at the West Las Vegas Library, and they are closer to the Boulder City Library.
Yes.
They come to you at the West Las Vegas Library, you commence providing services, but they want to work in Boulder City. Are you, as the West Las Vegas provider, able to reach out to employers in that area?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's first question. Thank you. Second question, if you are applying for the different clusters, can you apply for as minimal a number as you'd like? Example one, say example, there is the opportunity for the Clark County Detention Center for youth, and then also the one for adults. Can you just work with the youth and not have to apply for the adults?
Yes, there's the adult reentry is with the Clark County Detention Center, and that is a separate proposal. And then the youth is a separate proposal as well with the Spring Mountain Youth Camp.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Faith,
Yes.
how soon will we have access to the PowerPoint presentation?
IT, Mike? Maybe this afternoon, for sure tomorrow. Any other questions? Oh, wait.
Just one last question. I got just one last question. Regarding the seats, so in the central cluster, there'd be 29 available seats there, or whatever, 27 or 29, whatever it was. But that would mean that I'd have to have 29 people down there?
I would say not necessarily. We'll negotiate that with you. It could be shared positions. It could be like a shared between like different locations. There could be more locations added.
But yes, that's the central location is literally right next door to us, and that's how many seats they have. If you're building a budget, because we expect you to fully man that one stop. So if you propose I don't know how you would man it if you didn't have that many people.
Right. Piggybacking on that, as Brett said, there are thousands of people walking into that center, so we need to have appropriate coverage to serve them all.
I think he said weekly or monthly. Was it monthly? I don't know. It was a lot.
So the second part to that question that I have then is that of those 29 seats that are there, is that allocated towards just that one, the one vendor, the one
Yes.
person coming in?
Yes, there's 29 seats for adult and dislocated
Yeah,
work,
okay.
and then there's 3 to 5 for youth.
Yes. So I would have 29 seats available. Just
Yes.
Everybody else they got their own set of 29 seats.
Yes.
whoever that they might be.
If they came into one of the other clusters, yes.
Faith,
Online.
can you clarify, is it 28 or 29 seats?
It is 28 seats in the one stop and 1 seat in the Maryland Parkway Job Connect. Again, that is subject to change. So for that cluster, it is 29 seats.
I also want to mention something that as a board, we're working on this vision of what we look like as a system. So I know in the past we've looked at, it's Goodwill of Southern Nevada, Rest Care, Workforce Services, and so forth. If you are seated within a one-stop center, even though your staff may be employed through your company, they will be referenced to as one-stop staff. We will not be utilizing your home office name and those sorts of things, just so that you are aware of that.
Good point. We are one-stop staff branding.
And in the middle of that one-stop, staff, again, is not just the Title I provider, right? There's also staff from DETR. There'll be staff from DHHS or from whoever they are. And that doesn't mean you lose your identity. Of course, if the next layer of is, my home office or my paycheck comes from DETR, and I'm a DETR employee, but I'm here as part of this 17 partner system, providing the function of a one-stop center. And that happens at the Job Connect as well. It will happen at the other centers. So it's just, again, not about losing identity, because we'll always still be employees of rest care per se. I think that was the example that used. But it's in the context of I'm one of multiple partners trying to provide one-stop center services.
Any other questions? All right, go eat lunch.